Hello, my name is Olivia Shortt, and I'm here with Duyun, who is a Pulitzer Prize winner, a Grammy nominee, and a Guggenheim Fellow. Duyun, I have a very special relationship with Duyun, but also we're very excited here at the Music Gallery to have not only Duyun today talking with me, but also her band OK Miss is going to be performing during the Avant Festival. So while I was kind of reading up on some stuff, there was something I saw that you had said, and I wanted to bring this quote up because I feel like it can be applied to a number of different things and different topics within music making and sort of you as a multidisciplinary artist. There's this quote from the Forecast Festival in Berlin, and it's you saying that the barrier between us and the other must be shattered. And I kind of love that. And I kind of held on to that today because I was thinking about that, not only as a multidisciplinary artist, but also within your work within education. You know, you're a professor, but you also work with kids and you work with people of kind of a whole spectrum of experiences, ages, demographics. It's really kind of amazing. And so I love that that quote, in my mind, I know I'm taking it out of context, but I feel like it can be applied to so much of the work that you do. And I was wondering if you would want to talk a little bit about your future music project and what you've been doing with that and sort of how it's evolved and how it started.
Hello, everyone. I'm Duyun. So great to be here. And I simply cannot wait to share this most amazing video I'm putting together with my band. It's going to be more like an art film rather than a band music.
Amazing.
Because I'm actually thinking about how to use 2020 when the time is not on our side, right? But really look at as more proactive way, in a sense of how music is presented. If things can be done like a produced, why not approach it as an art film or as a poetry? So you know, and I think that's the power of being an artist, which is to say that we are not going to be we're the creative types. We're the original. We're championing for the original thoughts, and this is where I think our strengths are, is problem solving, is looking at where it needed to be done, and a little bit also take that leap before we actually don't have any other alternatives. So to get back to what you were saying, that the initiative is called a Future Tradition in music, or Future Tradition, and this is also coming from like years of my work working with regional artists or amateurs from different pockets of the world, the different regions in the world, and especially where I come from. I'm born and raised in China, so the idea of the classical music, first of all, it needs to be also questioned. You know, whose classical music are we talking about, and whose traditional music are we talking about? Even though I did go to a conservatory and absolutely had all Western conservatory trainings, but more and more I'm thinking, you know, when you're having those kind of enculturations, and when I'm collaborating with artists who from oral tradition, and I think that kind of collaborative process needs to be reassessed and re-examined, because they're just not enough a model with which that we can actually say this is a sustainable model.
That's amazing. And I guess I'm wondering, because you often act as a mentor as well as a curator in a lot of your work, and I find that really inspiring, and I'm wondering who are the people that inspired your early work to get you to this point?
I don't know if I'm still...
It's okay if there's no answer to that, because sometimes, you know, it's just the people you work with, like your colleagues. Like,
Yeah, I know. It's like sometimes it's just like happen like overnight. You 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 think that you're still, the upcoming one, and then they're like, oh, actually, you're no longer upcoming. I'm like, what? But that's
I
okay.
love that.
You cannot want everything, right? And I think we will keep the laughing in this is a very integrated of who I am. So what was the question? Is why the mentor?
Well, I guess what I was curious about, who has inspired you? Who has, have you had mentors early on in your life? Do you still have mentors? I'm just curious about that because mentorship has been a big part of my life lately, like working with people who have much more experience than me. And I love hearing other people, especially someone who has all these, very fancy titles beside their name. Like,
I feel like sometimes my friends are my mentors.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned music when I was really little. And growing up, I had great professors. I had a few great professors who take a belief in me, and so namely like my first composition teacher, and Tkarón and Randolph Coleman, who teaches at Oberlin College, Oberlin Conservatory. Now he's retired. So those people who actually take a position in my for instance, Randolph Coleman actually he was the chair of composition department when I applied for Oberlin College, and my visa got denied for 2 years in a row, and so I told him that he has to fax to the embassy consulate, and he did. Yeah. And then he did, and I used that notification of his fax to be able to get back into the consulate door. And then I was ready I deliver my final speech to the consulate office. Like, no, you must give me the visa because I have to be the composer. And luckily it was a her. I still remember her very much so. Like, the ones that always denied my visa were men, and it was her, and I was like, I'm just gonna be like a composer, and then she laughed at me, and I was like, oh, maybe she doesn't understand my English. Let me say it again. She's like, come back, and I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, your visa is already approved. So and I remember like that afternoon was like the happiest afternoon of my life. That sounds very bleak now.
No, but also it's obviously like showing, you said something about only wanting to be a composer at that point, but now when anyone looks at your career up to today, like you do so many different things. Like you have this really cool band, OK Miss, all the improvising work that you do. I love like you sing, you play, and like I just want to hear, I guess, more even about your multidisciplinary practice.
But to me, that's what composer meant to me.
Okay.
What I think to me, it meant like having a say, having my creative voice. So that I don't want to be the pianist, I don't want to play other people's music, right? When you look at my work, it is like, it's pretty much I'm the creative role. So I lead the visions and the stuff. So I'm very fortunate and I'm very lucky to be able to do that.
I like that you say that because especially in North America, sometimes the definition of what a composer is, especially in classical music, like we have this weird concept of what a composer is supposed to be, but really you just described like what you do as a composer, and then it is such a broad definition, and it's not you just write something on paper. You create music in whatever way.
Absolutely. One of my closest collaborators is visual artist by the name of Shazia Sikanda. I believe she has a close working relationship with Aga Khan Museum. So um, we, if when we were talking about each other's work, I don't feel like she just positioned herself as a visual artist, or I just
Yeah.
position myself as a composer. I think rather we always tackle with the question of identities and the tackling with our histories and the lineage and the experimentation out of that, the breaking out of that.
Yeah.
So that is our entry point to our practices, and this is something that I really hold dear, because I don't think I am made for being a composer, but rather I have a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
So composing or making music or making an idea, uh, or curating or mentoring, these are all the same thing to me, that I am just practicing my visions, or I'm helping someone else's vision to amplify that or to lift. So that to me is the most critical steps of me being a human first.
Yeah. And you've been so many different places, all over the world. Like you're currently based in New York, but a lot of your work has brought you all throughout Europe, all throughout Asia. And I guess I'm wondering, like, what is the response from a lot of the students you've worked with, or from people that you've worked with in your Future Traditions in Music project?
So for since for over a decade, I would find myself work more and more with. Okay, I'm always. Let me restart this again. It's funny because sometimes you say one thing, and then people think that that's the only thing you do, and
Yeah.
then so I have to like say first is that being composer, writing the concert music, or writing for opera, writing for whatever you name it. It's always it's never stop, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not like, okay, I'm going to shift my focus just on that, and then you don't do that. For me, you can do so many different things. What I'm trying to say that in addition to that, I find myself more and more working with oral tradition and artists who have different other than classical music, Western classical music practices. Uh, in school, maybe you're taught, we learn how to improvise and how to work with, improvisations, and or how to work with people who are great improvisers. But I think being composers, the idea of notation is always very fetishized, right? Like you
Yeah.
have to prove that you know how to write the score, so that you can manifest your intelligence. But that intelligence can be multifaceted, and can be like also um, with the reference to literature, with the reference to history, and to history that is other than your own. So not about appropriating, but about expanding, right? About an expanding and understanding, and also including other people as your collaborator. So that is very, very important. It's not just saying
Yeah.
that we are just I'm going to just working still with my work, put my name on it, but that collaborative process is increasingly more and more expensive, if that makes sense. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're only going to be the composer and the performer who can read the notation, the scores, right?
Yeah.
So I've been thinking like how to when we can speak the same language, not from the linguistic to dialects to the musical to gestural, how what can we still communicate with, and what shall we really talk about? So that is something that throughout the projects, I'm learning about the collaborative process, which actually takes time, and it takes this evolving process for you to understand what that history could mean.
Do you have any projects, either recent or from the past, that you've really enjoyed doing?
I am currently finishing up an AR project with the Kunchi Opera, with the Suzhou Classical Garden in China, and featuring an 80-year-old Kunchi opera singer. And just such a joy to look at her footage, and the idea is I wanted to make it because well, it is pandemic, so that AR is much better to
Yeah.
people experience. So I wanted to also use this time to really look at how art can integrate technologies. But more importantly, I want to use this opportunity to work with a very well-known artist, not only because she's well-known, but whose age has just given herself of such an understanding of her roles. Yeah. And I also want to use a bit of the this excerpt to, and the excerpt is about like the 16-year-old girl, but thinking about the blossoming inside her. So it is about ageism, you know. So in the end, I wanted to look at what age means for women, what age means for different type of women in different places.
I'm also wondering, with some of the curation and mentorship and the collaboration that you do with other people, like I see your name pop up on a lot of different festivals as either someone who's curating part of it, or you're mentoring up and coming artists. And you were recommended to me by someone, and when I was looking for mentorship through the Jack Project and the Jack Studio, and I'm really inspired by all of this that you offer to other people. And I guess I'm like, a big part of me is wondering, like, what do you get out of being a mentor, and what do you give out about all the offerings that you make up to other artists?
Every night I think about this question.
That's fair.
No, I was being funny. Well, I think to be able to ask this question already define what I wanted to do. You know, I don't think that I'm. It's very natural. You know, I don't think I'm gonna want to get out of it. Also, I always think that I'm incredibly lucky and incredibly like to get where I am. It's through generational sacrifices from my own family, and also through a lot of people's like lived, right? So, and when you look at our classical music landscape, from the gender equity to race to sexuality to all in all, I'm looking at like actionable items. I'm also looking at how can I offer so that the next generation can do what they want to do, but with a faster time.
Yeah. At least the way I relate to what you're saying and kind of what I've seen, from being on the internet and seeing the different festivals you've been a part of, is that a lot of the work you do feels very community oriented. And I'm using community kind of loose because sometimes community is related to culture, but then also it can sometimes just be, whatever your personal mission is. Like, within a lot of indigenous communities, a lot of artists want to make sure that they're giving back to their own communities, because you have to recognize where you came from, and you have to recognize that past generations did labor that has helped you get where you are, which is like exactly what you were just talking about. And so
yeah, sometimes it's not just about, maybe I am globalist. I never really understand what that means, but I don't mind not knowing either. I think that when you travel, when you find yourself in different places, and then you will meet people. And then you will, because I like people. And I think that's very important, like if you like people, if you are curious about how they live, you will have those conversations, and you will want to listen to their world, how they are approaching to their life and in music and a culture. And sometimes it's really, really hard to make new work with their forms or with their practices, or maybe very just simply a platform.
Yeah.
Because everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to feel that when we're doing cultures, it's just this innate urge that we want to communicate. And that idea of that someone else is listening is empowering. So I want to make sure that I can make that process be a little bit shorter for them, if that makes sense, right? So a lot of projects that I want to go into do is not about my work. It is because, let's not forget, people like us, we have incredible platforms. Just the fact you can travel is incredible platforms.
Yeah.
So we just have to look at the privileges we have, and sometimes, just one simple email, some simple phone calls, and looking for fundings and looking for different ways of fundings are critical for making those steps realizing.
Yeah. Do you have any?
Sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That totally makes sense. Yeah, that was incredibly clear. I was like, yes. From that, like, I'm wondering, do you have any dream projects that you have yet to do? Or something that like maybe isn't possible right now, whether it's because of the pandemic or just like.
I think it's possible. I want to kiss you. I mean, I want to give you a hug. But that's not possible.
True.
So are you saying that what's my projects after pandemic?
Yeah, since nothing is impossible, what are your future dream projects?
In terms of future tradition, I am working on with one of the projects I'm working on is working with Alicia. And 2022 is the 75 anniversary year of the India and the Pakistan partition. So I want to do a project maybe on the border of, because a lot of people don't know that China, India, and Pakistan has such like sustainable and weird, like a triangle power thing going on. And in India and Pakistan, unfortunately, as countries, they are not allowed to perform together. But I think that with the help with a third country, actually, not China, but like some, so I want to make that project go in. That a project that is to commemorate that, because then through performances and through culture, like my dream is to be at the border, and yeah, and that, I think that will be incredibly powerful. And then I am still working quite a bit for the Yushu project with the kids from Yushu Tibetan Autonomy Prefecture, and they are all first generation school kids. The idea is also not only to have a performance of this new work, but to also help them to learn their own folk music, because many of them are deteriorizing. One of the foundations now on the ground is working at the collecting the music and the materials, and hire local musicians to teach to the school children, right? So that they are not forgetting about their culture. But also, when I'm there, I learned what happened is that it's okay to want to know more things, because as a kid, essentially, you just want to go out. You want to go out. You want to see the world, and this is just like your need and your urge, So I want to also show the possibility that not only can they and should they like learn their own music, but they can also learn others and have a very experimental idea, and the story is their own stories. It's not just they're going back to repeat the old stories, because when you look at tradition, we often confused with tradition and customs. And the tradition is, as I understand, is a heritage for tomorrow.
From all of your traveling, I guess I'm wondering if there are any artists who maybe were some of your favorites or highlights to work with. If you want to talk about a few of those, or even artists that you have yet to work with that you would love to work with.
You?
Ah, you're cute.
Say it again.
Oh, I just said. I guess I just ask you if you have any interesting like people that you've worked with in the past, or it's kind of two questions. I'll stick with one question. Are there any people in the past, like artists that you've worked with, that you'd want to talk about, who you find really interesting or inspiring, or you have funny stories about from all your traveling?
One of the most moving onstage experience I had was actually from Lahore, Pakistan, when I was working with a local boys and girls from Lahore, and the boys are the offsprings of the traditional musicians from the walled city, which is the old town, and when you are from that, it's most of them from lower to class, I would say. So, which means that a lot of the societal resources are being closed off to them, and sharing the stage too was with the girls who goes to the Catholic school girls. And so the traditional music, the boys are often in wedding band or funerals, right? So that's the only chance that they have that function. But this was like during the Lahore biennials, and the collaborative work with Shazia Sikandar was in front of the Lahore fort, and when the boys sang, I had my tears in my eyes. because they never get to sing like that, they never get to sing like that out of with this kind of context and to their own people. And this is where music and the future of that music can passing on, is that we have to, like, it cannot just have like a few societal functions. Otherwise it's yeah. So that was very powerful moment. I don't have good stories with work with so-called famous people, because
Oh, that's not what I'm asking about. Just interesting people in general. They don't have to be famous. Just artists that you found exciting to be around or to collaborate with.
oh
But also okay if you
I
don't
like
have
working with Raven Tkarón.
Yeah, actually, I would love to hear about.
I learned how to say with Raven's, Duyan, let's be serious. Let's have a serious look. And then he'll go, Duyan. And then he will say it like very intensely, and then it goes, it is what it is. Okay, yeah. So we worked on the opera called Switzerland.
Yeah.
So he was my. We shared the Airbnb for a couple times, and it was fun.
Did you know Raven before working with him on the opera?
Mm-mm. I know of him. I know of his music and his practices. I've never met him in person.
Until you started like actually collaborating and
yes. The first time we met each other was in Berlin Academy.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
What did you enjoy about the collaboration process? Because that was an outdoor opera in LA.
It was an outdoor. It's such an open outdoor. Yes. What it was like?
Yeah, what was that whole process like? What was interesting about working on that opera for you?
It made me realize how little do I know about American history.
Yeah.
Just the more we dig deeper, the more I was like, whoa, this is really complicated.
Yes, indigenous history and colonial history and history with
and all that, right?
Yes.
So,
it's very complicated. You are not wrong in saying that.
Yeah. So I was like, how can you really done so much to this land within this span of time, So
yeah. And not only to this land, but also to like thinking about the people who were brought over, like all the whole history was black slaves. Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, and the exclusivity act to Chinese people, and
all,
and it goes on and on. So
yeah, even looking at current events with ICE, with the detaining people in cages. Yeah.
But luckily, Raven is a very generous collaborator, and he, it's not like he's gonna do the indigenous part and I'm gonna do the non-indigenous part, because that would be awful.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think there's just a lot of trust and a lot of understanding and a willing to listen to each other was really helpful, because it's easily would be in this kind of project you would feel that your views are being slighted, right? But it was not so have to give also a big prop to the co-director Chanuba Haska and also Yvonne Sharon and the industry company.
And were you a part of any other process with the opera, like casting any of the singers or?
Yes.
And could you speak a little bit to
made
that?
really sure that it needs to be as much as people of color.
So,
Um, so so we did really like our work in terms of auditions and by recommendations and asking and do it again and again until we find the people, because it's so easy to say, oh, you know, we're just gonna find this because it's easier, or or someone is closer, you know.
Is that something that comes out in other projects? Because like I know specifically this opera, it made sense, but in other projects or collaborations you've done, is that part of your process, whether it's casting or hiring of other people to work with you, like having BIPOC or just thinking about different communities and representation?
Not so much in my own work, but curation, absolutely.
Yeah.
But often my work is already dealing with that.
Yeah, you do
But
very naturally do that.
So there is such like integrated way of that, right? But I do have to say, I don't think about my own work that, look, when you are people of color and you happen to be women, it's really hard for me to write a white man's story.
Yes.
You know? So
yeah.
I don't know how to write a white man's story, you know what I mean? So essentially, maybe it doesn't make any sense for me to cast all the white men.
Yeah.
My story is not going to be their story. So this is actually getting to a very important topic I wanted to bring, is that we need more creators of BIPOC creators, because we need more our stories to be told. Yes, we can say, you know, where are the Black opera singers? But until we have the same amount of those opera works that can be staged again and again by and our stories being told on stage, and then we can really look at how really to. No, I can never say that phrase right, but you know what I mean. You know, so I think it needs to. We also need to look at the stories creators, and it's very much so too. And the problem is also very much in depth in the on Broadway, in Hollywood, and in mainstream as well.
Yeah, and to also like to add to that point, this is something I've talked about with other groups and other, you know, even just friends in private, but you know, sometimes it's only about the trauma side of history, like the traumatic side of history, and a lot of, you know, Indigenous Black POC artists are like, no, I also want to talk about the good things and not just like intergenerational trauma and things that have happened in either your own past or your community's
Absolutely.
past.
Until we can find that we have done the service to shift this landscape,
yeah,
then we can really do that. You know, what I'm trying to say is that no, not gonna say it.
Okay.
Well, I think it's a normal process. No, I think it's a process. You know, I think it takes. Yeah, I think it's. What I'm trying to say is that we need creators, we need performers, we need people who represent it. We also need more people in the boardroom and in the decision making and the grant giving. All those people also needs to be more of the BIPOC people.
Yep.
Because then they will understand. Let them laugh a little, or a lot.
Yeah.
Or only. You know, I think that is the freedom that we wanted to talk about. You know, the reason I immigrated was because I wanted to do music, as I said earlier. Is because I thought, you know, this is a land that if I wanted to do something, I'll do it. I'd be able to do it. And I think this is also the work of the diversity also needs to be like that too, is that if you want more people to say it, you should also be fine with whatever because the freedom means that freedom to choose of the content that they want to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well,
the freedom of rejection too.
Yes. I keep coming back to mentorship in this discussion, partially because it's something I try to advocate a lot for wherever I am, like when I'm with different organizations with different levels of power. Just because we need to also support all of these people. You can't just put someone Indigenous into a position of
Absolutely.
leadership because they're Indigenous, but also to support them so that they can do that role and not fail.
Yeah.
And
I have sometimes when I was talking to Liza, it dawned on me that maybe sometimes we should not call it a mentorship.
Yeah,
we call it like maybe like a mediator, or someone who can like mediate situations and experiences and translation, not just linguistic translation, right? The cultural, the habits, the way of doing things. So I think that to have a mediator is so important. Mediator is not a compromiser. Mediator is like translating what the needs and just the ropes. So when you're thinking about mentorship, it's more like it still has that hierarchy,
That's true.
So if it's a mediator, so it's more of like a collaborator, that kind of feeling. Because when you're thinking about, like, you always need, if you go to like a village, you don't just go like there and be like, I'm gonna like
I am the mentor.
Yeah, I'm the mentor, like
yeah.
Or you go like find someone mentor, maybe, but someone who has been outside, who understand from both sides.
Yeah.
Who is not going to speak on anyone's behalf, right? But maybe understanding the process. So I feel the mediator in some practice could be even a stronger word.
Right. So that they're acting more like a peer, and we are shifting less from the, you're here, I'm here, to more like we're actually.
Because when you're looking at like people's a set of skills, right? People's sets of skills. For instance, Olivia, you play the saxophone. I cannot play at any wood instruments.
Right.
Give me something, it will sound woo, woo, woo. But
just like that.
Just like, oh, that's a good sound. But maybe I have like done more string quartets than you did. So I can say, okay, so this is good, like that approach. Like maybe I did more like operas and put on things than you. But it's not like mentorship, Like I love the times we hang out and talk about things. If I would just think like I'm your mentors, I still think that would be like a power struggles,
Yeah. Yeah, hierarchy is definitely something that I've been trying to think a lot about more as, I'm working within different organizations who follow kind of a Western system. Even, you think about an organization having a board, having an artistic director, an executive director, having, front of house staff, like that. There's still a power system at play, but I like what you're saying. And that's actually something I have enjoyed, like in hanging out with you. And the word mentorship is kind of weird, because I remember when we first talked about it, you're like, what am I doing? Like, what is my role exactly? And I was like, I don't know. I just want to hang out with you.
Stop eating chocolates.
I just want to go to the Whitney and look at some art with you and have wine after, and like talk about, listen to you talk about your life. Like, I think there's so much you can learn in just a conversation. But yeah, you're right in that mentorship does have still a weird stigma with it.
But sometimes I think, in personal life, I really appreciate times that I have my mentors, or some friends who can all of a sudden can give you like sage advice because they just simply because they have been there.
Yeah.
a little bit before than you did, or they share the same experience, right? And those are incredible power and sounding advice that you can possibly have. And just also knowing that you're not crazy,
Yes.
you know, and then knowing that your sadness, your tragedy, whatever your tragedy is, whatever your sadness is, whatever your grief, um, someone else perhaps is also being there,
Yeah.
is a very powerful thing. It makes a lot of people don't want to commit suicide, because when people commit suicide, yeah, like, you know, because it's just a breaking point, you know. So the mental health is very important in our field as well.
Yeah. Thinking about sage advice and just, I feel like in some ways, myself and other people I know who are in a similar position to me, like I've benefited more from hearing about like kind of both the good stuff and the bad stuff, because, you know, now you're seeing a lot more people talking about mental health, you know, even just within an artistic community. And I think feeling validated that like being able to talk about, say, depression, or if you're bipolar, or whatever it is that, you know, if you're diagnosed, undiagnosed, going to therapy, how these things are just a part of us being very human, and that we're still humans making art. So I really appreciate you saying that, all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, you know, this is why a lot of, when you were saying that, you know, the us, the shadow, the other, right? The first quote that you mentioned, it's also, I was referring to that as well. Being a recent immigrant, you know, like you spend so many years um, feeling like you don't, like they're alien, you know.
Yeah.
And they actually do call you alien, so it's even better.
Oh
um
yeah.
so that's why a lot of people don't feel they belong, and I want to make sure that I get to talk about those things, so that, and I often say everyone's immigrant stories has their own backstories.
Yeah.
So don't assume how they get to where they are, you know. And the how, and yeah. So there's just so many gray zones in that too, and I just want to make sure that we, and yeah, we can have that empathy for that.
Yeah, it makes things complicated, but also really good. Um, I'm not totally sure where I'm going with that point, but it just can make things complicated. I come, my mother's side of the family, my grandmother immigrated from Ireland, which, you know, they were leaving at the time when Ireland had just become independent and had dealt with a lot of awful, you know, their history has been very up and down, obviously, but they'd become their own country. And yeah, so listening to those stories of like my grandmother coming as a teenager because she was seeing Canada as a place where she could essentially do better and be financially more stable, and then to look at the other side of my family, which is my father's side, and he's Anishinaabe, and like just what has happened with, you know, his family being here this whole time, but people kind of coming over, and issues with land and our reservation up north. Uh, anyways,
Absolutely. I mean, this is why I love the work Aga Khan Foundation has done to the region and to the people.
I'll say this is a good point to wrap up. I really appreciate you taking all of this time, Duyan, to talk about a lot of different things. And to be a part of our festival. I want to thank also the Aga Khan for being such an amazing collaborator. And they, like, again, without them, this would not be possible, but we're so happy to have had this conversation with you. So,
Yeah, thank you for listening and thank you for sharing. And it's incredible that we still have festivals going, and it's incredible we still have talks going. So I really appreciate it.